Hi friends, this is Yoga Light. Today we look at part 2 of manifestation in yoga. In the last video, we divided manifestation into two approaches, an outward view that focuses on circumstances and an inward view that focuses on our becoming. In the outward view, the basic idea is to change your life by being patient and persistent in consciously directing your mind towards manifestation. You identify an imbalance in your outer circumstances or decide where you want to be, and then you affirm that you have the power to change it. You visualize the outcome, the new situation that you want. Using visualization and affirmation, you clear inner dialogues, confront psychological blocks, emotional patterns and old thought forms, and create new ones that reflect what you are becoming. You take action, engage in inner work to acquire the necessary traits and skills, and then take to outer action to achieve your vision. What you think and feel has a larger effect on the world around you. It draws the resources, opportunities, and conditions that fulfill your vision. The outward approach utilizes psychology and does work to transform who we are and the roles and personalities that come into play. However, this is still in light of an outward goal. If we focus on making things personally meaningful and avoid the traps of desire, we can harness our creative ability and decide how we move through life. This is a personal skill and doesn't address the situations we didn't create or the universe. Outward manifestation uses the motivational triad, which involves belief, action, and purpose. You can focus on any one of the three and it will boost the others. When you act, it strengthens your beliefs and affirms your purpose. Yoga employs a different approach. The triad for yoga is knowledge, will, and action. We apply our will to act from the highest consciousness. In yoga, we focus on the inward becoming, awakening our spiritual potential. We expand our capacity and enter into a more true way of being. This uses external conditions as a reflection and fulfillment. They also serve as a basis of practice. We practice by being in the world and interacting with people and circumstances. You are tuning into your true purpose, the soul's mission, and manifesting a spiritual becoming and opening to a spiritual atmosphere. Living in the world becomes a practice, and our progress will benefit ourselves and the world around us. Relationships, work, and living situations can be transformed as we practice. This is the realm of karma yoga, which is the yoga of action. As always in yoga, there are different descriptions. The higher consciousness that is aware of the divine, always with the oneness, is spirit. The spirit acts from knowledge of the truth in harmony with the divine will and acts in the world as grace. An aspect of spirit acts within the individual and forms a soul personality. This is the part of ourself that touches the divine, and this part forms in nature and moves from lifetime to lifetime, evolving and reincarnating. Spirit is unaffected by the manifestation and your actions. It supports the being and the becoming, both above and behind it. It is spirit that moves nature, all manifestation, to evolve. The higher ranges and the spirit behind work on the collective world. Behind us, the spirit is at the depths of each level of being, so there is a spiritual aspect to the physical body, life energies, emotions, and thought. On the human level, these are cloaked with ignorance, and we only experience a small range of our nature, with limited action, and are unaware of the basis of our existence. We think we are separate from the world. We are dimly aware in the surface consciousness of our body, emotions, and thoughts, as interpreted via our senses and acting under a loose coordination and struggling control of the ego. If the Kundalini activates, then it opens up to a wider awareness and a range of powers that are concealed or latent, part of our spiritual potential. The truth and real action are typically concealed within each layer. The Kundalini, hidden at the base, rises to merge with the higher consciousness above the head. As it does its work, it opens the Nadi's subtle pathways, activates new awareness, makes new connections, and fosters new relationships with the universal forces, changing the flows around us. Knowledge, bliss, harmonies, expanded awareness, and new abilities all emerge as the Kundalini ascends. We can also tune into the spirit at any level and allow the spiritual energies to descend from the higher consciousness above the head. These involve themselves with us. It is the spirit at the heart as the soul or individual spirit, along with this pressure from above, that causes us to turn towards the divine. Our realization that there is something more emerges from the action of the grace of the Spirit. The soul, as an individual form of spirit, creates within nature a soul personality that evolves through lifetimes. The soul has the ability to choose and influence our incarnation. Immortal, it moves through lifetime after lifetime as it navigates and utilizes the world conditions into which it takes birth. It aims to enter and bring about conditions that are lessons for our progress. It sees the truth of all situations in its contact with building on what came before or branching out in new directions. It carries forward karma, both positive and negative, that support those lessons. It aims at a progressive movement of rebirth through lifetimes as we move to reunite with the divine. In our human form, we are limited to our ego and conditioning, relying on our senses. The soul within sees the truth. It knows the right action. However, this is often obscured by the aims of our ego. The various levels, physical, emotional, and mental, are tangled up with the outer conditions and subconscious habits. The purpose of yogic practice is to move past these and make a connection to the soul and spirit's influence, so we act on the basis of truth, rather than reacting to the momentum of the surface of our life. The different practices, asanas, breathing, meditation, initially calm the mind and emotions, relaxing the physical, develop the subtle pathways of energy, and expand the awareness to come into contact with deeper resources of our subliminal, with the soul as its basis, and the higher consciousness and spirit above. Initially, the soul is more subject to the world conditions, which can thwart our growth. The world is a tangled mess of ignorant movements that sometimes fall into harmony and rhythms. Various powers compete to actualize their aims, and these movements are filled with incomplete truths, distortions, and errors. There are also true movements, and behind all is the divine, allowing nature to play out from an original impetus, but also intervening, influencing, and directing the creation via spirit and grace. The creation moves from an initial aspiration that is leading slowly back to the divine. Our evolving soul personality can be caught in a birth that fails to learn lessons, gets caught in movements of ignorance on the surface of things, and has to return to master these wrong turns. But as we evolve, we gain more influence and direction. We make progress developing the different aspects of our being. We enlarge our capacity. The truth of our being and the true purpose of our becoming slowly emerge, and our power to act and influence the world slowly increases. You are creating conditions for your own progress. You use your ability to manifest as you become more conscious of your development in order to accelerate your own growth. Your destiny is assured. Finding the divine, identifying exclusively with it, is our purpose. Not only individually, but also the whole of creation's purpose. This separation, our lack of awareness of our true self, is the primordial ignorance. Initially, this search for our purpose in life is through the world and the play of events, taking on all sorts of roles and occupations, every conceivable relationship. But as we awaken, we turn inwards. Our energies move from being focused on the outer world and desires for success, fame, relationships, and situations. This inward turning is not a rejection of the world. It means that our focus is how we are in relation to the world. The goal is to become aligned with the divine will, to express divine qualities, to be open to the action of the grace, the energy of the Spirit. We have to remove our attachments, reject wrong movements, desires, and allow the deeper action of the truth to emerge. It is not that you are going only inward. You are not just sitting around journaling or sitting in meditation for hours on end, but you respond and act in the world from a spiritual movement. You are training your mind, body, and emotions to be responsive to the Spirit while interacting with the world. Your mind and body remain connected to Spirit while in action. When you deal with work relationships, it comes from a spiritual place. It doesn't matter what activity we are engaged in, doing flows on our yoga mat, having dinner with our family, trying to fix our plumbing problem, or selling our car. All action should flow from our spiritual connection. This is not a moral building of character or having to do with right or wrong based on a code or following the ethical standards of our society. Those are generally about prescribed acts and inhibiting oneself. They are a pre-made judgment that is then justified and imposed. We have to realize a higher truth within and rise above a moral consciousness. This is not a license to indulge in desires, but rather we act in a flow based on the needs of our spiritual development. This requires faith and an open, receptive witness. As we aspire to maintain our connection in action, we find that the spiritual energies gradually transform us, bringing qualities such as sincerity, equality, and peace. Knowledge and insight arise more freely. We find ourselves being clear, grounded, and possibilities in life open up, and events around us begin to change. As we are here for the soul personality development, we are given the resources and circumstances for that growth. The initial stage involves following guidance, which can take the form of direct guidance, such as a voice or vision, or more often through a sense, where we feel right or are drawn to something. Life is full of surprises. Many events are happening outside of our control, and there is constant change, especially now. We can often look back at upsetting changes such as the loss of a job and see how they were actually the best thing for us. We can also start with a plan only to find it being changed by circumstances, people, and our own incapacities. But out of it arise other ways, means, and opportunities. My friend's husband passed away, and she was retiring. She got excited when her sister suggested that they get a house together where her sister lived. When she told me this, I got the distinct impression that her sister wouldn't be able to come through for her, which turned out to be the case, but it prompted my friend to start looking at other places to live, and she ended up traveling with her daughter. She decided where she wanted to live, a small town in Washington state. When she got back home and told the story, 3 out of 5 people in the room knew of someone or had been to that town 1,900 miles or 3,000 kilometers away, even though no one could find any connection between the 4 of them. That turned out to be a very good move. We can simplify this to 2 basic practices. The first is to gain a level of receptivity, acceptance, and quietness. We may not have that in each moment, but we can tune in with awareness and openness. We return to that state and aim to move from it. This is the practice of equality, or you can say equanimity. We see things not through a lens of desires, agendas, associations with the past, or personal preferences, but with a clarity and freshness that comes from a connection to a higher awareness. Things don't disturb us as we witness them. It is not a dry state, but rather one of peacefulness and joy. This does not come quickly, but is the result of long practice. The second practice is surrender. We need to let the energy, the influence of the higher consciousness work. This requires a level of faith, and we must also be able to set aside our ego and the self-concern that dominates our consciousness. Typically, we experience everything and react to it based on its relation to our ego story. How does this affect me? How can I use this to my advantage? We worry, desire, and remember. It is not about putting others first, nor out of some moral obligation or sense of service, but about staying connected and allowing the spiritual presence to unfold. Whatever happens inwardly or outwardly, we offer it to the divine, place it within the light, both the good, the true, and the beautiful, and the bad, disturbing, and shameful. Faith comes in as we have faith that the grace can change, harmonize, and make use of all existence. The yogic triad is knowledge, will, and action. We know that there is something more, and that we are not perceiving reality through the senses. As our knowledge expands, we have to act on the highest truth we have. For instance, if you experience a past life memory, this can come with the feeling of immortality, not just teenage invulnerability. If recognized, this immortality alters the way we perceive others and our own sense of accomplishment and purpose. If we act on this, then purifying the fear of death is to act from a greater truth, and we need to apply the will. If we recognize that life is happening in support of our growth, we can accept things and treat them with equality. It is not a mental equality, but an equality of spirit. It is not that everybody gets their say, but that one is receptive to the truth being said. My teacher told a story of her father's declining health. Several students went to help take care of him. He lost control of his bowels. This meant cleaning him and dealing with the situation, and my teacher pointed out how one of the students really did this without hesitation. It needed to be done, and so it was. We expect nurses and orderlies to perform demanding tasks, but actually we should face any task that needs to be done without hesitation or a sense of personal concern that some task is beneath us or we don't want to do it out of some personal preference. There is a time to consider and make a decision, but once that's made, we must go forward. The divine is doing all tasks, as it is all divine. The divine, or spirit, actually has complete freedom. As we perfect equality, we discover a foundational joy in awareness, a basic joy of living. The spirit is equal in all. The divine loves all and appreciates all equally in every instance. There is a peacefulness that is at the root of consciousness, and all existence is consciousness in action. Treating everyday situations with great equality and maintaining a spiritual connection is not easy. It is quite challenging. Focus on the process, not the outcome, nor on the self. One of the aspects of the physical practice of asanas and movements is honoring your body. You have to have the physical awareness and acceptance of the state that you are in. When you can listen, you will find things emerge as you need them. However, the mind is easily dominated by all sorts of agendas to push forward, to deny pain, to do what we like or what we're good at, all the different kinds of preferences we have. Our ego image of ourselves is at stake. It is also easy to become mechanical or to be thinking of something else while practicing. We have to return to the higher state to be clear or sincere. We have all sorts of notions about ourselves. I am not flexible. I am strong. And these notions may or may not be valid in some sense, but there is always a measuring ego coloring the notion. We may doubt that the subtle energies are being developed, that things will change as a result of the practice. Focus on the practice and move to refine, strengthen, and open more physically and energetically from an open, receptive state. This is where the insight and expanded awareness are experienced. Each time we practice, it is different, unique. Practice with the ideal of maintaining awareness as a continuous state, even during deep sleep. It is always about the state of consciousness while you are doing activities. For instance, I made a lot of progress when working as a clerk. In dealing with the public, we had a few customers who were probably mentally ill. One was very prone to anger at the slightest trigger. It was always good when he came in because I was always aware of my reaction to him entering the store. My goal was to treat him from a calm, clear state, rather than reacting defensively or engaging in an inner dialogue about myself. Instead, I aimed to stay present and focus on the task at hand. Be in real time. Another time, a woman came in who had a powerful impact on me. I felt a strong desire and an obsession seized me. After a day or so, I realized she reminded me of someone I had a crush on many years before in high school. So it was a subconscious association triggering old emotions. Again, watching myself react and seeing how my mind worked was the practice. When we recognize that we often project our emotions onto people, for instance, if someone at work is angry with us, then the next time we see them, we act as if they're still angry. This creates a dynamic. They sense our state. If we are fresh, sincere, genuine, and even grateful, people will pick up on it and tend to respond. Our mind and emotions are free with equality. When we have a measure of this, it can take on what is needed. We may need to be forceful and insistent with someone, or point out mistakes, or rebuke them, but where that comes from is a place of compassion, sincerity, or truth. In conflict with someone, the quality of courage can arise rather than fear, even the ability to act with clarity from the witness while feeling fear. It is easy to own our own inevitable mistakes when it is not about our ego or being worried about how we are perceived. Practice is not easy. A higher viewpoint doesn't make the world suddenly give you an easy path. Gratitude and appreciation can emerge more freely. For instance, I have been to countries where litter is everywhere, where there is open sewage, so I always feel grateful when I see a sanitation truck. I try to always be present with the person who checks me at the register. It may be that I will learn something or make a connection in that brief interaction. Even when I fail, I can see that I am not connected, so it can help me to wake up and return. The divine put you wherever you are in that moment, as the whole creation is moving from an infinite eternal above and within. There are many traps of interaction. Often we act so that we appear as our ego would have it. We want to act as the highest truth would have it. If you can maintain a sense of openness and clarity, there are many things you can learn inwardly and outwardly. It is not a state where you are in dual mode, where you are trying to stay self-aware, examining every thought while you're trying to do work. You have to focus on the work without self-concern. It sounds like a contradiction, but part of the witness is well aware of the quality of your mind and actions. But more importantly, it is also not a dual state where you are thinking about how things relate to you, or worried about deadlines, or complaining inwardly about something. You need to focus on the task at hand, but with openness. Try to do it with great skill. This is the sign. It is not a thought, though there is a practice of remembering to do the practice. It is the openness, calm abiding, clarity, appreciation, courage, and sincerity that indicate our connection. Some tasks are challenging to focus on, and certain things can be easily distracting. For instance, it is different to be absorbed in a movie or novel or a video game than to be absorbed in doing a task. It requires focus, so it is an active awareness. You could have that reading a novel, for instance. I was once amazed for most of an afternoon after I caught a very vivid image in my mind from a scene in a novel. I used to practice visualizing scenes in books, each scene as I read it. Some authors can do this well with words, and others master simply having a scene referred to as a setting. There are many layers. As we maintain a calm openness, we usually discover one of three things aiding us. The first is guidance. We can get suggestions from a higher or deeper source. These often require an application of will to follow the suggestion. Knowledge, will, action. Most of the time we are bombarded by suggestions from different parts of our being. For instance, we may desire recognition for something we did at work, but at the same time we dismiss the idea as being silly. We also have things that are in the atmosphere that are picked up subliminally, such as unease or pressure towards falsehood. As we get quiet and open, guidance appears as a matter of fact, or simply put, sometimes with elation, but never with a sense of demand or urgency. It is presented calmly. We have to discriminate and recognize true wisdom. Guidance from the soul, which is in touch with the truth, initially is cloaked in the forms of the mind, such as my friend moving. She got to where she needed to be, but it didn't come to her directly. She had to have her sister suggest something and go through a search for a house they could live in, only to have her sister back out. All to good purpose. The messages that arise may repeat in the background or take on different forms till we learn to recognize them. Guidance also comes in the form of being drawn to certain people, events, or ideas. We seem to recognize something in them that engages us, or they keep recurring. We learn to recognize these as doors to further growth. The second, things can happen spontaneously, and we simply act, even in novel ways, or say just the right thing, as there is a harmony in the situation. The higher consciousness has insight into the many forces of which we are unaware. The third is that we can feel or see the energy, vibration, the force working on us, descending down. There are many individual ways of relating to the energy depending on your own nature and experience, and the kind of practice that you do. The energy can work inwardly, removing blocks, or descend with knowledge, either a direct vision or a clear idea, or it takes up the thinking mind and you get an inspired stream. It can awaken the heart and move the body with prana kriyas. It can also take up the events around us and shift things towards better outcomes. The goal is to surrender to the higher energies and allow them to unfold and bring progress. Karma yoga is sometimes defined as public service or charitable work, but that really has nothing to do with it. People do charitable service for noble and egoistic reasons. Sometimes what they do to try and help makes things worse. Staying spiritually connected, however, moves from a true vision, so even the most mundane act can have positive consequences. Karma yoga is the practice of acting from a connection to spirit. It is all action equally, not some social standard. We start from a spiritual connection, as Blaise Pascal said, "You would not seek me if you had not already found me." The form that connection takes initially is our personal one, and changes over time as we progress. Even when we are lost and unsure, that connection is there, and some part of us, because it is what we are, knows and is in touch with it. For some, they know what they want to do and their path in life. Others struggle to find it. It can change over time. Even people who are very driven to a goal may find the goal is not what they really wanted in the end. Our goals, desires, and who we are change over the course of our lives. The real purpose, however, is to merge with the divine, and whatever course life takes is the means, and a field trip into the manifestation. We have been doing this through countless lives. By surrendering to the higher part of our being and allowing it to chart our course, we may not change our material situation much, or we may find ourselves on an unimaginable trip. We seek to be radiating and moving in a spiritual atmosphere, allowing our focus on the divine to be the goal of manifestation. This may mean using the outer manifestation, working towards a particular goal, but the motivation has to be radically different. Sometimes things prove to be catalysts or provide an impetus to change, outward signs and outward reflections. Various spiritual practices provide a means of concentrating on the goal. For instance, with mantra, taking up a Shiva mantra will provide for a transformative path, with sudden dynamic changes, whereas one can find harmony through Vishnu. There are many mantras used to produce results of all sorts. We can be led to a particular mantra or even have them spontaneously arise. For instance, at one point in my life I was strongly drawn to Bharatanatyam, the Indian classical dance. This had to do with seeking an enlightened physical and understanding the use of subtle energy exchanges at the emotional level. I didn't have any teachers, but even before I knew of the dance existence, I was drawn to do Tradak on the image of Shiva as the dancer, the Nataraj. I started doing Shiva mantras and would sing them at work when I had a job cleaning a lumber store. Shortly after, someone took me to see a dance, which I didn't even know existed. This was before the internet. It was a solo dance, and she happened to have a set of musicians from India. Within a couple of years, I, who have no talent, and am a guy in a woman-dominated art form, and the only straight male dancer that I met, was hanging out with big-name dancers in India and even had a class with one of the two main people who recovered the art form after the British banned dance in India. I attributed that to past lives and the mantra. I was able to tune into the subtle realities, and the flow took me to places well beyond my rural Iowa upbringing. Concentration and investment in the meaning were important factors, as opposed to mechanical repetition. There are occult recipes, as simple as breathwork or more focused on the natural world, such as medicine bags, to overcome various blockages, including to increase your income or knowledge or flow with love or to deepen peace. All of these require concentration and application of the will, a unifying will, commitment, self-giving, offering, surrender, compassion, knowledge, and devotion. Aspire for more light and connection, and the will to act on what is given. Whatever you're doing or concentrating on, the Spirit can use it, and it is actually only a symbolic form of Spirit. Over time, we can begin to see how events take on a different meaning. Things no longer seem to be happening by chance. At first, this is a level of understanding. We understand that things happen for our benefit, and we use that to accept what is. We look for wisdom, what we can learn from things. This can be outwardly directed, as in learning a practical skill, an essential part of living, and also an inward learning of knowledge of self and creation. At a second level, we see commonality, a symmetry. We can sense the flow as people and events unfold. There is a larger idea or movement that we see running through events as a theme. The third is inversion, where the energy moves through us, taking up our actions. The spirit and power of grace are acting all the time. It happens to us as individuals, bringing us what we need, but we can also see it happening at larger levels. We can step back and see the evolution of the earth as the material world on which life and mind evolved. We can also see world and cultural changes that point to a higher ideal, something truer behind the working out of the forms that it takes. For instance, my mom taught mathematics in a small-town high school. Due to the town's shrinking population, it was under pressure to consolidate its school with other small towns. They resisted this because they would lose their school teams and their identity as a community. It was a contentious issue. While this was going on, I happened to take a geography class on locational conflict. The professor on the first day talked about the book he was working on involving school consolidation. Part of this was due to small populations and the small tax base for supporting the schools. Therefore, money was made available from the government to build new community-based schools in the 1920s, but they were required to have sports facilities. The idea was an attempt to move the focus of local communities, which were often based on ethnicity and religion, to supporting sports teams associated with the schools. In my mother's school, the community raised money to have a family move into the district so they could have a star player for an 8-man football team. I knew I was in the right class. This shift was later echoed when I taught at a hospital center for complementary therapies, whose goal was to legitimize many of these practices. I was asked to teach yoga, and at the time, I was the only person in the city who had a regular class. 20 years later, I could look out from my house and see 2 yoga studios that weren't mine. While teaching at that center, the head of the city's school came to me and told me that the most popular class in their school was alternative PE, where they taught things like juggling, yoga, and non-competitive fitness. It had a long waiting list. The class was also the most successful for overall grade point improvement. The problem was that none of the phys ed teachers wanted to teach it because their focus was sport-oriented. When I went to PE classes in high school, we had little organized instruction or activities because the teachers didn't know how to handle gender-integrated classes. This was all part of a larger social and cultural change towards a positive lifestyle, one that I was connected with and riding as a wave of manifestation. Though we have our unique individual path, there are also group paths and universal paths. There are 3 movements. The first is the mechanical unfolding of consequences. The second is the evolutionary path, making progress forwards. And there is an involutionary path that comes as a consequence of the higher consciousness putting pressure and allowing new things to appear, such as new relationships between the subtle body and the physical. This pressure causes nature to attempt to realize them with preparation, changes, failure, and inevitable success. If you got something out of this video, please hit the like and subscribe. Till next time.